Hello and good morning everyone, and welcome to our virtual coffee morning. Hope everyone is doing well today, and nice to see lots of new faces and familiar faces here, so thank you very much for joining us today. We've got a lot on the agenda, so we'll make a start. So just to run through what we're going to be talking about today, we're delighted to be joined by a few different speakers. So we have Charmaine from the Student Loans Company, who's going to be doing a presentation on student finance and how to support your students with their applications. And we also have some updates from Jo Sampson at Queen Mary University London and Chris Derbyshire at the University of Sussex, who are going to be talking about their current outreach opportunities. So some great things to take back to your students. So we will make a start, because we've got quite a lot to get through. Just a few notes on housekeeping. So we're recording the session, so just to make you aware of that. We ask that if you could keep your microphones on mute while others are presenting, just to avoid any feedback, but please do pop any questions or comments or thoughts or ideas that you have in the chat, as we will be monitoring and responding to that. So we will make a start. So what we're going to do to get us warmed up and get us started, we know it's been a really even more challenging time for schools of late, and there are lots of changes going on in the education landscape. So as a little bit of a warm-up exercise and to get us thinking, we'd love to hear from teachers your responses to a few things. So we're going to launch a poll through the power of Zoom, and just have a few different questions for you to think about around things like teacher assessment, grades, thinking about virtual work experience and how successful that's been this year, and how much your students are able to engage with that. So we've got a few questions for you. You should be able to see that. I think we can leave it live, so do feel free to just respond to those questions as we go through as a bit of a warm-up activity, and yeah, we'll have a look at those responses at the end of the session today. Can everyone see those okay? Have they launched okay? Brilliant. Okay, so just before we hand over to Charmaine, we're going to do a very quick plug for something that we've recently launched at AccessHE. So in response to the recent lockdowns, we have sort of collated all of our resources in one place, so that you are able to search through the different resources that we have available. You can search by year group, by content, by length of time. So we hope that this really supports you with providing activities for your students to do while they're at home. So just to plug that a little bit, and we also propped our email address here if you would like to get in touch with any requests for any sort of more bespoke activities that we can create for you. So just to plug that a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is hand over to Charmaine, and she's going to present on all things student finance. So over to you, Charmaine.
Thank you very much. If nobody knows me, I'm Charmaine Valenti. I'm one of the funding information partner account managers for the Student Loans Company. I'm based in the Southeast region and I work from home. The presentation today, it's only 25 minutes, so it's going to be a very, very quick run of things. If you want more information, then please do contact AccessHE and they will be happy to organise another session or a Q&A if you'd like that. If you'd like to go to the next slide, please. So I just wanted to quickly go through who is Student Finance England and the Student Loans Company. A lot of people aren't aware of that. So the Student Loans Company is owned by 4 governments: England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales. And in each domicile we do something different. So if you imagine the Student Loans Company to be the umbrella of student finance, then in each domicile somebody will apply to their own domicile. So for instance, anybody in England would apply to Student Finance England, anybody in Wales would apply to Student Finance Wales, etc. I have got my details down there if you do want to contact me directly at a later stage if you've got any issues. If we go to the next slide, please. I was asked to cover these areas for you. Now, bursaries and scholarships aren't something that the Student Loans Company per se does. So it's normally the universities and colleges that will have different types of grants, bursaries. So I'm going to touch on some of these for you and where you can find the information. And then I'm going to talk to you about student finance, the application and the deadline support, deadline dates that are available at the present moment coming up. And I'm sorry, bear with me a second. And then going to go through underrepresented groups very quickly, just on care leavers, because we don't have a lot of time to be able to go through that. And I do want to touch on repayments, because all students, if they've taken out a loan with a student loan company, will need to understand the repayment system. Next slide, please. So I've given you, and I can't see them at the bottom, so you may not be able to see it at the bottom, but I've given you links to where I've got this information from, and it's from UCAS, Student Room, and some of the other areas that I've got them from, and I've linked it all for you so you can go and find out more information on them. But where you can get more support for students, like for instance, if they want to go for interviews at the university or go to open days, some of the students from vulnerable backgrounds will be able to get some assistance from university. So it's worthwhile checking with them what they might be able to get. I work with Unite, Careers Enterprise Service, the Office for Students, Turnaround, a number of different charities, and quite a few of them also give grants. For instance, Unite Foundation gives free accommodation for vulnerable students. So there's areas that you might be able to get either information on certain bursaries, or you might actually be able to get grants from these particular companies. Next slide, please. One area I did want to touch on, where it's been a huge thing over the last few years, where there's been a change in the way the students have been funded to go into nursing. Now, it's in addition to getting funding, full funding from the Student Loans Company based on their household income or their circumstances, they're also entitled to a bursary from the NHS. And some of those can be from £1,000 up to £8,000 they can probably get, and they don't need to repay these. There's information on the bursary site on the Gov.uk site, and also on the NHS BSA site. So it depends on what course that they're doing and where they're going into. They can get extra funding from some of those, and I wanted you to be aware of that. So students who are going into nursing are now getting a lot more money. They're getting virtually double the money from the Student Loans Company that they would have done originally, and on top of that they're getting these grants. Next slide, please. Touching on deadline dates, this is exceedingly important, and it's one area that is quite close to my heart recently because students haven't been applying on time. I've been doing some regional research and just across the country, and 50% of students apply after our deadline date, and they're not going to probably get their funding on time. We do about 1.2 million applications per year, and it's important that students apply as soon as possible. Now, a lot of students, like about 20% of them, apply in May, which is just before our deadline date. However, if they've not submitted all their application in evidence to go with it, then they're going to be late in their applications as well. We're launching later than we would normally do. We normally launch about February. At the moment, I haven't got an official date that we're launching, but we should be launching around about the beginning of March. We need to launch as soon as possible. So if you've got any students that are interested in university, get them to start looking after the 1st of March. I'll show you some feeds on where you can find the information from as well. They need to provide all their evidence before the end of May to us to ensure that they're going to get their funding on time. And if you've got any returning students, now that your remit is to be able to look at where your students have gone on to, part of good practice might very well be to let those students know that they need to reapply for their student finance again for the following year. Even if they're in university, they need to reapply year on year. Next slide, please. So key messages, you might want to use this slide. I have given out this presentation and it will be sent out to you. So they do need to make a note of their account login details and keep them safe. The reason for that is because if they keep ringing us to get the details, it can create more fraud because they've lost their details. Somebody else might have their details. So to keep it safe and to make sure that they can log into their portal on a regular basis to make sure what's happening with their application. Provide us with all their evidence first time before the deadline date, and submit everything that they can before then, and then check their portal to see what state their application is at, and to read all the terms and conditions. Now, some people may not need to be able to provide parental income because basically the parents aren't supporting them. If that's the case, then students will basically only have to provide their own details and not parents' details, and that will be a lot quicker. I'm sorry, bear with me a second. I forgot that my oopsie daisy, sorry. Oops. Do apologise. I need to keep moving my thing around so it will actually not shut down my screen so I can see what I'm looking at. Please may I go to the next slide. So before starting their application, just a normal student would need their passport details. If they've got their passport and it's in date, then the system will accept it. They don't need to send their passport in to us. And if they have got a passport that's out of date, the system will not accept it. So students will need to then send in their birth certificates. Not sure if you're aware, but in Britain we've got two sets of birth certificates, one long and one short. If they're asking for parental income details, then if they send in their short birth certificate, it won't have their parents' details on there, and it'll be hard for us to match up the details. They should also put their customer reference number on the back of their birth certificate and send in the long one. The university course details will need to be ready, but they can move that across from UCAS onto our application. And we can't pay them if they haven't got a bank account or a national insurance number. They can actually submit their application without those two, but I would suggest that they put their bank details in at least and get the application running, and then the national insurance number as soon as possible. But it does take us at least quite a few weeks to get the national insurance number sorted out with our link system, and the sooner we get the national insurance number in, the better. Now, parents, they will also need to be able to supply information. So on the application, a student will have put in, yes, my parents will be supporting me. They'll give either an email address or they want to do it by letter. Parents will need their national insurance numbers and their household information. So if you've got students that are going to be applying for September of this academic year, parents will need to supply their P60s for April 2020, basically. So it's the prior tax year that we need. Now, you might find that parents may have lost their jobs in that time and don't have any income coming through in this last year because of COVID. If that's the case, they still need to provide their P60 for last year, 2020 April, but then provide documentation to show what their circumstances are at this stage. They also need to provide any details of any other children that they have. Next slide, please. Wanted to touch on care leavers. The definition of care leaver is completely different in a number of areas. The Office for Students is now working with the Student Loans Company and the DFE to be able to see if we can look at all these definitions to try and put them into one category. I think that's going to be quite difficult, but for our policy for student finance, this is the actual category and definition that we need. So a student needs to be in care for 3 months prior to their 16th birthday or on their 16th birthday before actually going on to university the first day of the course. Now, you don't need to worry about this, but you do need to make sure that if they have a social worker, that the social worker can confirm that this is the case. If that is the case, then we get a letter from the social worker, and then we will be able to give them full funding without any parental information at all. Next slide, please. Standalone is a charity I work with quite closely with regard to estrangement of students, and I have noticed since COVID's been around that we have had a lot of students who have become estranged over this period in time. if you do know that the parents have been estranged, they've not just had a fight with their parents, but they've actually been thrown out, aren't going to be talking to them anymore, they have to fund for themselves, the sofa surfing, that sort of thing, then it would be worthwhile talking to the university that they want to go to and getting a form, which I've given you the details of where you can get that form, and the university will be able to speak to the student about their circumstances. And the way the form now works is that that person doesn't need to know the student for 2 years or more. They can have a look at their circumstances, see if those feel right for them to be able to get funding under estrangement, and they can get the student to complete the form and send it to the university, and the university can send it to us without having their signature on it, and we can then take up the student's application and give them the full funding as an estranged student. If you want me to go into any of these in further detail at a later stage, I could talk for hours on them, so do let me know and I'll be happy to come back to you. The next slide, please. I did want to touch on this. I'm not sure how many people will have students who come from the EU that are actually at their schools, but the rules because of Brexit have changed. I've just given you some links to be able to go to, but they do need to actually register under the EU settlement scheme. If they don't, then they won't be able to get any funding. Now, if you've got any students who were EU students before when they were with you and they're now at university, I would suggest that you write to them and let them know. The university should be doing this, but they might have missed it or they're not sure. But if they're coming back the following year to the university and they're EU students, they do need to register under this scheme. Next slide, please. Just click through for me if you could. Just wanted to let you know about tuition fees. Now, how much are they? They're £9,250. The students won't be paying any of this back. It is a loan until they actually go into repayment. We will pay it directly to the university or college. We pay it in 3 terms, in September, January, and again in the 3rd term, 25% in term 1 and term 2, and 50% in term 3. The tuition fee isn't based on household income at all, and the tuition fee basically is going to go directly to the college, and then they will only start to repay this loan once they go over and above the threshold and they start working. Now, universities will be able to charge up to £9,250. That's if they've got a teaching excellence framework, but you might find that students also go to a private university. They'll need to do their research here because all university courses that are private don't actually get funding from us, and the ones that do, only maybe some courses do. So they do need to check what they're going to what course they're going on to, and is it actually going to be registered for funding. They will only get a maximum, as I've put on the bottom, I think it's 6,165. I can't see it at the moment, but I believe that that's all they'll get. Now, if the tuition fee is say 7,165, then they will need to find the difference between the two themselves for the private university. Next slide, please. Just to see what students would then get in the way of maintenance. We've talked about the tuition fee. Now, maintenance is based on household income, as I mentioned. So care leavers would automatically get the full amount of money. So elsewhere is anything outside London. So for instance, if they're going to Brighton, Sussex, Surrey University, they would get £9,203. If they're going into a London university, they'll get 12,010. Now, the London university generally is anything within the M25. However, on the peripherals, you will find that some of the universities and colleges still get London allowance. So, for instance, Royal Holloway University of London is based in Surrey, but they do get the London allowance. Others who are going to have like parents and parental income, well, it depends on whether the parents provide any details. For those who aren't going to provide any details or above the threshold for being able to get students any extra funding, the students will be non-income assessed. So that's called non-means tested. People who get anything more than the non-means tested amount are deemed as means tested. Overseas isn't for overseas students coming to the United Kingdom, but for students who are doing an overseas placement or study abroad as part of their UK course. And I could talk more about study abroad and for vulnerable students at another time. Next slide, please. So this slide is also quite useful because if you are talking to parents and you wanted to know what, you don't need to go into their own financial details. You can go, if you're on £55,000 a year and your child is going to live at home with you and travel into their study course, they will get a maximum of £3,831. That will be broken into 3 terms. They'll get that in September, January, and again in the 3rd term. If they're going to be living on campus, let's say elsewhere, and still £55,000, you can see that the student would get 5,246. And if it's a London university that they're going to be living on campus or with friends at the university, then it will be £7,989. So this is quite a useful slide to be able to go through, but any parents earning under £25,000 a year, the student would be able to get the full amount of money. You will get questions where, let's say I'm living with my boyfriend and I'm under £25,000 a year and I'm only earning 10. If my boyfriend who's living with me does not wish to give any income details to the student loans company, my child will be deemed as non-income assessed because the full amount of household income isn't being declared. If my boyfriend doesn't live with me, that would be fine. Parental income, let's say I've got a husband we're divorced and he's giving me funding, that's fine. He can give funding and it's now deemed as for the child. They need to declare that on their application, but we don't take that into account to be able to make sure that the student is getting the full funding. Next slide, please. Disability support. I did want to talk to you about this. Oops, sorry, I should have been playing with my actual. Oh dear, wrong number. Now, disability support is basically for students. So if they've done their application online, it'll ask them if they've got a disability. If they have, then they will tick disability and it will open up another application for them to complete. If you go on to the next slide for me, please, and just click through. Now, this is a grant. Students don't need to pay it back. It's not based on household income. And now students can actually apply online as of last year, which means that they'll be able to complete their application and they can digitally upload all their information. And that will make it a lot quicker. And then we can get them an assessment sorted out, find out what they actually need to be able to be on a level playing field when they start university. And the apps and any accommodation, anything like that can be put in place before they actually arrive. Next slide, please. Just wanted to go through a few of the charities and support that's available. Standalone I've talked about, so I've given you the link for that. Propel is a site that's part of the Become Trust. They've got funding for the next few years for that, and it's for care leavers specific. The Become Trust also works with lots of students to try and sort them through their care leaver experience, what they might be entitled to. So that's a really useful site. Brightside works with vulnerable students across the board. They also provide mentors to be able to help students in any form, going on to college, all sorts of areas. So it's a really useful site to look at. National Network of the Education of Care Leavers. They have a number of members working within all the universities and colleges. So they're a quite good site if you need somebody at a specific university to look at that might be able to help you. And the Care Leaver Association. I've also put down the Student Room because Student Finance England and Wales, the whole of Student Loans Company, pays for some pages on there. It's quite useful because we can have English, Ireland, Welsh, all the domiciles information on there. And also students can do Q&As. So if they've done a question and it's the same question that 500 people want to ask, they can see the question on there and they can then see the answer. Now, Student Finance England doesn't have a site of its own, unlike Wales and Northern Ireland and SAS. Student Finance England, you will need to go onto the Gov UK site and then go onto Student Finance. We've got pages on UCAS, and I've also worked with UCAS to be able to deliver some vulnerable information on there as well. Would be useful if you were able to download the Twitter feed and Facebook, because the Twitter feed will highlight things like Student Finance England is launched, please apply. And we've got lots of YouTube videos that are on our practitioner site as well, but you can actually download from UCAS and from YouTube. If you'd like to go to the next slide, please. Repayment. I'm very quickly going to go through this. If you go to the next slide, please, and just click through. Repayment, students only go into repayment the April after they've graduated. They only pay 9% on anything above whatever the threshold is. The threshold for the moment is £26,575. It will be going up to £27,295 in April. So students who might be in repayment now, who are on, say, £27,000 a year, will be making repayments to the student loans company. As of April, if their salaries haven't gone above £27,295, they will not be making any more payments to us. Payments are taken out via PAYE, so anybody who's paying getting a salary slip will automatically be, it'll be pensions have been taken out, national insurance and your student loan. Any repayments that you've got, or they've got any funding left after 30 years, whatever they've got outstanding. So if they've got £10,000 or £50,000, whatever it is after 30 years, it's wiped clean. Could you go to the next slide for me, please? Just to quickly go through this, there is interest added to the loan from day one. So when they start getting their loan, the minute they get it, interest is added at RPI plus 3%. RPI is set in March of each year. So for September of this year, it'll be set in March plus 3%. Once they go into repayment, and if their salaries are under 26,575 or whatever the threshold is at that time, it's at RPI only. Once they go above the threshold, and at the moment it's 47,835, they will pay RPI plus a sliding scale of up to 3%. Now they can look this up on the repayment website if they want to as well. If I'm earning £33,000 a year, I can go into it and see that it'll be RPI plus maybe 1.2% interest. Anything above the top threshold, and at the moment that's at 47,835, it will attract RPI plus 3%. If you'd like to go to the next slide for me, please. So this is just showing you how much they'll be paying. So if I'm on £31,000 a year, on this threshold at the present moment of 26,575, then I'll be paying £39 a month back. Now, for students who are doing NHS courses, you'll find I just did something for the academic registrars recently. And once they complete their course and they've got their grants and loan, the loan will need to be repaid. Now, when they go into nursing, if they're going at a level 5, they'll go in around about 22,500. They have a sliding scale that goes up on a spine, but if the thresholds keep going up as they are, the chances of those students ever actually paying any money back will probably be 0. The only time that they will probably pay anything back is if they've gone into management or they've gone into the private sector. And if they are in the private sector and earning £50,000 a year, then yes, they will be making repayments to our loan. Next slide, please. That's it. I've given you the practitioner details down there. Thank you very much for your time. That was a quick run through. Sorry.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Charmaine. That was really interesting, and yeah, really interesting to cover sort of the things around Brexit and implications for EU students, and I think just helpful for, you know, schools in London and students in London to see what they could be entitled to and how that might inform their decisions on where they study. So really, really helpful to see. We've got a couple of minutes for questions. So I wondered if there were any on the chat. Please do get thinking and do pop some questions in there. Just while we're waiting for those to come through, I know, Charmaine, when we spoke, you mentioned you suggested some really helpful templates that schools might be able to use to get their to send out to parents to prompt them in terms of the information that they might need for student finance applications. I wondered if that might be something that we could share as a follow-up.
Basically, I haven't done any templates as such. What I've done is we've worked with Leap Skills, which is part of the Unite Foundation, who have got a teacher pack, and we've given some fact sheets there. Now, I can send those to you as well, actually, so you can send those around, but I think Richard Boffey's got those already. And I'm working with a number of UniConnect collaboration networks to be able to look at delivering some student-facing presentations, which I'm going to write and then talk over, and then we'll be sending those out to all UniConnects, and then UniConnects can use them if they'd like to within working with the students. And we're going to do one specifically for vulnerable students, maybe care leavers and estrangement, to be able to put through for February. So hopefully that will be coming out just before we launch. Other things that schools can certainly do is to actually have a look at what they do at the moment. What do they have on their site? So if a parent wanted to find the information, I know I would go to my school to find it. So maybe have a look at those. If you want me to put something together specifically for you and you think that would be really useful, then I'd be happy to work with UniConnect to pull something together to send out to all of you, so that you can have links and things like that going to different places. We've got something that was quite useful that you can download as well, which actually gives generic stuff to information to people about if I'm a parent, what do I need to do? If I've got a disability or student who's disabled, what can I look at? Or childcare. So all of these things are generic and you can download them and they'll update themselves basically. So there's a lot of information, and it's just knowing what you can put onto your site for parents really. And parents do come to me because they can't find the information.
That sounds incredibly helpful. So perhaps we could follow up, Charmaine, and have a look at what we could sort of send out. But yeah, it's such a sort of, it can feel quite intimidating, can't it, to anyone to try and navigate sort of student finance. So I think the more sort of guidance there is, the better. That sounds fantastically helpful. So thank you so much. Yeah, and just people echoing on the chat how useful that would be. So yeah, we can certainly look into that. That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Charmaine. That was great.
Okay. Really
helpful to go through all that, and we will share Charmaine's slides after this, which have all the links in. So yeah, thank you so much. That's fine. Okay, so we are now going to move on to our next presentation from Jo Sampson from Queen Mary University of London. So I'm going to hand over to you now, Jo, and I'll resume my role as Chris Whitty and click through slides.
Yes, thanks, Michelle. Hopefully I can get through the information as quickly as you did, Charmaine. I was really impressed with how quickly you got through that amount of info. Cool. So yeah, I'm just going to give a few updates on some of the things that the recruitment and WP team have been working on pretty much since we've gone into lockdown really, but particularly some updates over recent months. So yeah, next slide, please. So Michelle, you might have stolen my thunder on this one. We've done a similar thing in terms of bringing all of our information and activities together. I think arguably it wasn't that easy necessarily for schools to find everything that they might have been entitled to or eligible for in terms of outreach activity for their students. So we now have an activity portal on our website where you guys as teachers and advisors can search by school or college name, by subject, by the kind of type of session that you want, or by the key stage that, that you would like it for. And it will bring up a list of everything that either your students can access individually, or that you're able to book as a live session or a pre-recorded session for your students. So if you go to the next slide, please. So as you can see, you can filter through to the key stage, whether or not individuals can book. So we will have some of these events will be sort of webinars that are kind of hosted centrally on our website, and students would book onto that and attend after school as individuals, and they would need to register for that by themselves. And then similarly, we've got in-person sessions, which we're not doing right now. We're hoping to be able to do again soon enough. And the kind of virtual versions of those sessions, which you can hopefully book and schedule in if you've got time kind of around the curriculum. So this should be a really clear way for you to find out what sort of things are coming up, and for you to search for specific things that you might need. We're always really, really pleased to hear from teachers and advisors. So if you do kind of go away and have a little look at this site and you find that there's some things missing, or there are things that you think would really, really be useful, do get in touch, and I'll leave the contact details on the last slide. Next slide, please. Cool. So this is just showing the same resource again. So once you kind of drill down into that information, you'll be able to see the session itself, a full description of that session. And if it is one like this one, which was aimed at particular students booking as individuals, it will give you the date and the time of that and how to book on. But lots of these are bookable for teaching advisors to book for whole group sessions. Next slide, please. So further to this, we have been running our Journey to Higher Education webinar series. This screenshot, as you can see, was taken a little while ago, but the series is continuing into this year. And also we have now made all of these previous sessions available on demand. So we've tried to kind of run through kind of everything that we think would be useful for students to know. Some of these are student-led sessions, some of these are staff-led sessions, and some of these are repeated as well. So for example, the UCAS ones, we are going to repeat the student finance ones over the course of the coming term. So yeah, that was really useful to get some of those updates from Charmaine. So yes, students can book onto these as individuals. Most of them run sort of 4:30 in the evening so that they can kind of book onto these. But as I said, the previous ones have been made available on demand. So if any students want to watch those ones at any time, all they need to do is go onto the page and register for those, and they can get access to those. Next slide, thank you. So as follow-up resources to a lot of these webinars and some of the live sessions that we'll be running for schools and colleges, we've also put together some MOOCs, so some mini kind of online courses which students can access on demand, and we'll hopefully kind of consolidate some of that learning and some of that knowledge that was covered in the webinars. These do also offer some takeaway activities, particularly the Applying to University ones and the researching courses. So hopefully you might be able to build some of these into sort of tutorial times or any kind of sessions that you've got, particularly with your sixth formers when they're looking to prepare their applications, do their research, in addition to things like Unifrog, which I know is a resource that lots of people are using at the moment. Again, free to use. Students just need to head over to the Outreach Hub to register for these. Next slide, please. Cool. Yeah, so that just talks a bit more about those courses. So they're easily accessible. They are mobile responsive, so students can use them on their phones, on tablets, iPads. And as I said, they're available on demand for students to complete at a time that's convenient for them. And hopefully, yeah, it will be used as a follow-up activity for lots of those kind of generic sessions that we have been offering. Next slide, please. As always, our Unibuddy platform is available for students who want to talk to current students of particular courses. So lots of universities do use this. Unibuddy do have a central website, and universities, we also have this hosted on our own websites. And as you can see there, you can search by sort of area of study, kind of native country, so where the students actually come from to study with us. And it will give you a bit of information about their background, what they previously studied, so whether they did a BTEC, whether they did A-levels, and a little bit about them and why they chose the course that they do. And then students can contact our students directly to find out kind of firsthand as much as they can about the courses that they might want to go on and study. And this is all kind of monitored by staff, completely monitored by staff. They don't get any kind of contact details for the students. It's all hosted within the platform. Okay, next slide, please. Something that we're looking to enhance at the moment is our kind of offering to parents and carers and generally kind of supporters of other supporters of these students whilst they're making their applications and doing their research. So we have now got a page on our website with a parent carer guide and with some tips, but what we would also like to see is hopefully more kind of parents and carers and supporters of applicants signing up to our alert service so that we can send reminders about things like UCAS deadlines, when to start your student finance application and those kinds of things. And also we will be running a series of live sessions to do with sort of welfare support and how students are supported pastorally once they start at university, just to kind of hopefully relieve a bit of that pressure, particularly in the current climate. Next slide, please. So further to that, my colleague Poppy's asked me to give a little bit of a push for this event that's going to be happening next month. So on the 24th, my birthday actually, 24th February, the East London University Student Wellbeing and Success collaborative event is going to be taking place. So it's kind of like a mini conference. It's aimed at teachers, advisors, parents, carers, anybody that's supporting students through the application process. There will be breakout sessions, Some of them will be led by colleagues in professional services across these institutions to talk through the kind of welfare advice, counselling support that's on offer, kind of pre-application right through to students' time at university. And there will also be a breakout session on supporting students with careers and careers experience whilst at university and finding graduate jobs, particularly within East London, with a focus on the area of East London. So as you can see, there are kind of colleagues from different universities supporting that event. Free to register for, so head over to the website to find that page if you want to register. Something else that we have included recently is the option for students and supporters to talk to one in participation team. So we are doing this between 1 and 4 on Monday to Friday. Sorry, that was apparently really difficult to say. Monday to Friday, 1 till 4. Students can request a 15-minute slot, or parents, carers, anybody can request a 15-minute slot. You can book that and then we will call you back. This is in addition to the inbound phone lines and the live chat and everything on the website. So if you do have any questions about kind of making applications, or your students want to speak to us about courses that we offer, or just to have some kind of general support with things like student finance or anything like that, really, then they are able to book a call back to speak to us. Next slide, please. Cool. I think that's, I managed to get it all done in time. Brilliant. So in terms of next steps and contact, so all of the information that I've talked through, the outreach hub, the content, the booking of webinars and the portal is all on qmul.ac.uk/outreach. If you want to get in touch with us directly, my team's email address is education-liaison@qmul.ac.uk. And we do also have a Twitter page where we'll be kind of posting these types of updates and when these events and webinars are taking place. Thank you for the slot. I don't think we've got time for questions, but I'm happy to take them afterwards, or if anybody wants to email me, I'm more than welcome to do so.
We've probably got one minute for questions, if there are any questions that have come through. Oh, there's a question about the Talk to the Team service and sort of the take up for that, and has the is it over the phone or is it over Zoom?
It is over the phone, so students will be asked to leave a phone number for us to contact them via phone. So it's not Zoom or it's not Teams call. You don't actually see the student or the inquirer, and it has had really good take up actually. Particularly, we see peaks and troughs, but for example, when the UCAS deadline was extended, we had a couple of days which where we were quite busy. Certainly before Christmas, we were quite busy. We expect to be, certainly when we hear kind of government updates and people are giving some last minute advice on something, we are quite busy with those. 1 till 4 Monday to Friday, and it's via phone, not via Zoom. And we do those callbacks. Thanks, Chris, for the happy birthday. That's on the 24th of Feb, which is when the East London event is.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Joe.
No
just really great to see the sort of range of support that's out there, and for students and parents and carers and teachers. So thanks so much. I think a really helpful reminder about UniBuddy. That's such a good opportunity for students to speak to someone and get a sense of what it's like to study a particular subject. So great reminders. So thank you very much.
Cool.
Fab. Okay, lovely. So do keep popping your questions in the chat if anything does come up, and we will share any links that are discussed in the presentations today, so you can just click on things to sign up to any initiatives that are shared. And we'll now move on to our final presentation then, from Chris Derbyshire from the University of Sussex. So Chris, over to you.
Thank you very much. And I know that you were going to do my presentation for me. So, and happy birthday, Joe. I'm obviously not going to see you in February, so I just wanted to put that up front. I feel like, if you can get that's fabulous. I feel like the person in the restaurant that's saying, do you want a third pudding? So I'm going to talk about our programme as well. But what I'm really keen, and Sussex are really keen to support, is that as practitioners and guidance leads for your students, to have access to as many different types of programmes and platforms as possible. Michelle, if I can get you to start with back one, I just want you to hover over the link and just to flick through the link a minute, because this is what I'm going to talk about. And then I'll come back into the presentation, which is more about context. So that should open.
Can you see that link okay?
I can see the link, I just can't see it opening.
I might, let me see that now.
Brilliant. And then if you scroll down a little bit, so this is our platform in the same way that Joe's just outlined our platform. Keep going, keep going. I'll talk about this. So for example, we'll stop there, go back one. That's it. If you go into explore our toolkits, which is at the bottom, blue bar at the bottom, middle of the page now, there, brilliant. And then just a quick scroll through that. And then click on any of those. And then quick scroll through that. And then this will be the context for what I'm going to chat about, basically. Keep going, keep going. It's just so there's a visual indicator, okay? Keep going, keep going, keep going. Okay, I'm back into my presentation. And I can talk once. I don't need to wait for the presentation to load. So that's the context of what I want to talk about. We've just launched a platform that allows any student to access it. So I'm a widening participation programme. I work with partner schools all across the coast and up through the southeast corridor of London, but also across London. We, like all the other universities, have worked really hard to bring all our content online. One of the things that's been critical to us is that in our pre-lockdown scenario, we worked through the coordinator in a school. We've designed a programme that the student will access and will report back to the school or the college what has happened. So what we've done is we've created a toolkit that includes materials to support information, advice and guidance, information and practical support to support transition, academic enrichment, and a residential once we're allowed to come back into a residential scenario. It's been based on, we set up loads of focus groups to understand the best way to set up. We've done stuff like all the universities for years, but we wanted to reinvent the wheel, I guess. And so we took a load of focus groups, and this is the outcome from those focus groups and the research that went with that. The programme is the reason we can offer it to any student is it's split into, we can go through, sorry, I should be doing a quiz with you all. Next slide, please, Michelle. So I'll just cover that bit residential. Next slide, please, Michelle. There's the contents about focus groups. And next slide, please, Michelle. We've split, thank you very much. We've split the programme into two elements. The reason we can offer it to anybody is because part of it, and you'll see here in the grey tab, will offer a good but basic offer to students. But like all WPE departments, we're working with targeted students. You can see a list at the bottom of the screen there. So we have an Access programme and an Access Plus. When the student enrolls onto the programme, they won't know what it is, but they'll fill in an application programme. And if their criteria hits a certain window, then we'll send them a contact to be able to access the fuller programme. The student that doesn't hit that won't know through the programme that they're missing out on opportunities. They're not opportunities. They won't be accessing as enriched and intensive opportunities or programmes. If we take the next slide, please, Michelle. Our programme is very, very ambassador centred. So although everything is designed by very experienced practitioners and the team that I work with, we will use nearly all of our deliveries via students. So Unibuddy, Ubiquitous, everybody uses that. It's across about 130 universities, but it's an important tool for our IAG, our transition, which would be like a buddy system, the live events, the toolkits will all be created with ambassador input. Or even if they've not designed the content, their voice is going to be very, very large across that. If I can take the next slide, please. Thank you very much. Again, with the split, so for example, in terms of our academic portfolio, and I'll talk about the IAG element in a minute, so every student will be able to access the top element, which is a 60-minute taster, but it becomes intense if we start looking at masterclasses and research assignments. That information is listed there, and these slides will be made available to you later. Next slide, please, Michelle. Okay, information, advice and guidance. So the little flick through that Michelle just did at the start when she clicked onto the first blue bar. So there's information, advice and guidance. There's a number of toolkits. There's 10 toolkits on there now. There will be 17 and they'll expand. These have been written by practitioners, and what they do is they collate, there's a narrative. We've created a narrative framework, but they collate best practice across the sector, across the domain. So we will nick things from UCAS, we'll nick things from career guidance companies, but we'll embed those with student voice and our narrative, which is about understanding the key points, the key signposting, the fact that the three organisations that are talking to you today are all developing platforms is because the system is awash and sometimes it's hard to pick. And I think all of us are wanting to have that approach, that angle that says, here is our unique piece. Ours is that there's an autonomy to it, that it doesn't have to go through a coordinator or a guidance practitioner. And again, I'll cover that at the end. We also, from an IAG perspective, there'll also be webinars and student-led content. We create the frameworks, but they will create the content. Next slide, please, Michelle. This will be stuff that will come online, so we hope to include tutoring, bespoke transition. So we're not selling our university. We want to be an IAG hub. We want to be recognised as an IAG hub of excellence. But if a student does choose to come to our university, and that's fab, and we work across the nation, then they will get bespoke transition support, and that's to enable them to feel comfortable about their choices, not to enable them to get a backside on our seat. And we're very, very clear about that. They'll be engaged in an ambassador program, receive work experience, and we'll also design a social program that allows a student to understand the social benefits of university pre-entry, so they can understand what opportunities are likely to happen. We're aware with the type of student that we target, that it's great getting them in through your front gate of any university, but they're also less likely to access the opportunities available to them once they have gone through that front gate, and we're very keen to address that. Next slide, please, Michelle. So from a student's perspective, it's a sign-on process. So the link at the start of this video that Michelle went through will take you to this. Any student can sign up. They can decide whether they want to do it or not. They'll go through a mini process. Next slide, please, which will allow them to complete complete an application form. We'll write back, check criteria. There's a set of permissions from parents and around GDPR and stuff like that, and then receive an official welcome. What will happen then? So from that means as a school, you're not aware of what your student's doing, but once they've logged on to, and this will be the targeted students where we've collected that information, once they've logged on to an activity, which is the bit where they can sign on to events, we'll then report back to you regularly, and it's going to be about once a month. It won't be a calendar month, because you could argue that for Easter, and there's hardly any point. But we'll report back to you with a bulletin to say that you have had XYZ number of students. So even as a school, I might not know you, but your student will trigger that relationship. We'll write back, say XYZ students have been on XYZ number of activities. We've got about 85 events between now and August. And what we'll also do is, based on that will also then trigger us to then send updates and bulletins to you, so that if you want to direct it to other students, that's great. Our website's always going to be there, and that link will always be there. We will also send updates to the student, so they may hit, they may be want to go onto a webinar and then forget about it, but actually we'll just prompt them and say, if you want to come in, have a look at something else, it's there. But again, the autonomy sits with the student, and we hope that they're sitting across other sites, blended platforms, not just taking one site. Next slide, please. Happy to take any questions. I would look at the very front of this program for direct access to the platform that we've created. For any contact that you would like with us, accessprogram@sussex.ac.uk. Happy to take questions. Thank you for your time. Well done, Michelle. That was great, Chris Whittying.
a new role that I can put on my CV. Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much, Chris. That was great. And I think so useful perhaps for schools to know that you can, report on, students that have engaged with different content through the University of Sussex. I think that's something that we were really mindful of when we were putting together our resource, that the timings of activities are really helpful, considering the latest DfE guidance around how much homeschooling students should be aiming to do. So that kind of links in quite nicely.
And schools still have accountability for what's happening for their students and their students, and in terms of response to their parents and engagement with education. You still have reporting procedures that you need to do about the validity of the work you're doing with your own institutions. And obviously we're collecting data as well, which all us universities have a business agenda, in that we have to gather data to evidence what we're doing as well. So it's very much a two-way street and a true partnership.
Absolutely. Yeah, really helpful. Fantastic. Does anybody have any questions for Chris at all?
Oh, I can see everyone now. That's lovely.
A bit nicer, isn't it?
Yeah.
More like a gallery. Fab. Well, thank you so much, Chris. And again, we'll share your slides and share those links associated with all those activities. That's fab.
Thank you very much.
Lovely. We are miraculously running to time, so thank you very much to all of our presenters today. We'll just return back to the poll that we had, hopefully running effectively in the background and staying live, just to see yeah, a bit of a picture about how schools and teachers are feeling at the moment. So I'll run through those. Can everyone see that okay? Can you see?
Nope.
Okay, I click something which hopefully means that you can see the results.
Oh yes, yeah.
Fantastic. So we asked first of all about teacher grades and the sort of feeling towards them about should they be awarding grades based on students' current performance, given how difficult it's been with yeah, homeschooling and all of that sort of thing. So the overwhelming response there is that to some extent, which I think is yeah, a fair picture. It's going to be, I think, quite challenging for teachers to try and base awards on a recent picture, so there'll be lots feeding into that. The next question was around virtual work experience. We know that lots of schools have found it difficult to access and find virtual work experience opportunities, so it's great to see that more than not have been able to access those opportunities over the last year or so. And I think there are more and more opportunities that are coming out, and businesses are becoming, you know, more aware of that, and hopefully will continue to be more available. We asked about the sort of opportunities that virtual work experience offers, and does it match sort of that in-person experience? And again, to some extent, is the sort of overall response. So positive to see. I think there are certain things that you can't achieve through Zoom. So yeah, I think that's fairly understandable. We also asked about virtual higher education outreach activity, and fantastic to see that, yeah, most have been able to access that. So that's great. So we will keep doing what we're doing and keep sharing those opportunities. That's really positive to see. And we asked the same question around if that meets expectations and if that's achieving, again, the same thing as sort of in-person initiatives. And yeah, again, mostly sort of meeting a bit, but I think obviously there are things that virtual experiences don't meet as well as being in person. So interesting to see. And finally, we asked which year group you think would be a priority for this year, which we've previously asked as well, and I think it tends to change depending on what time of year you're asking, but year 11 and year 13 are coming through as the main yeah, priority groups, which we've sort of heard before. Really interesting. Well, thank you very much for responding to that. I think, Chris, you had a question based on...
Yeah, hello there. Thank you very much. Very quick. And I just want to add to the point about access to virtual offers. So it's really nice. I'm not working in partnership directly here with Joe. This isn't a joined up thing. I think you look at the platforms that Joe and I are offering, and more than a lot of the universities are able to bang out webinar content that necessarily will have a student recruitment element attached to it. It's driven by the recruitment teams, doesn't necessarily have the quality or the altruism that should be attached to those programs. So universities will saturate you with offers, and it's to weed out the chaff from the wheat, really. And I would say, looking at Joe's, just how he set his up, I know that there's an altruism and there's stuff that's beneficial to you as organisations and to students, likewise for us. And I know that with AccessHE, that is going to be the case. Because you're good eggs anyway. So, but yeah, be really mindful. There's loads of content out of it. Some of it is just chaff.
I think that's a really good point, Chris, definitely. And I think, yeah, from speaking to schools, it can feel quite overwhelming, just the sheer volume of things that you're sent. So that's something that, yeah, we're sort of really committed to doing, to make sure it's really, you know, good quality and really impartial. So yeah, really good point. Fab. Okay, I think we will wrap things up there. We nearly managed to get it within the hour, but not quite. But yeah, thank you very much to everyone that's come along this morning and everyone that's presented. And we'll be in touch about the next copy morning shortly. But have a lovely weekend when it arrives.
Thanks, Michelle. Thank you, guys.
Cheers. Have a good weekend.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.